take a moment to observe yourself. Truly observe. The image looking back at you isn't the individual they assumed they understood. It's not the edition they spoke about in whispers. The one they attempted to trap, to mold, to diminish. No. This represents something completely different. Something authentic. Something impossible to deny. Something that moves in quietness yet ignites like an inferno. They requested it. Each stare, each chuckle, each uncertainty they cast toward you, they planted the seeds. And from those seeds, you emerged. Not delicate, not breakable. You emerged as disruption. Stunning, frightening. Impossible to restrain disruption. You probably sense it whenever you navigate through existence. The heaviness of skepticism in their expressions, quiver in their speech when they comprehend what you've transformed into. It's not vengeance. It's transformation. It's the result of every insult they ever assumed would destroy you. And here you stand intact, beyond intact, glorious in your turbulence. They never envisioned this. They believed they could sculpt you, render you flexible, render you harmless, render you unremarkable. And currently when they observe you, everything they perceive is what they manufactured and couldn't comprehend. A natural phenomenon wearing human disguise. And each heartbeat, each spark in your eyes, when each composed stride you make, it frightens them. This isn't restoration. No gentle explosion. No silent rehabilitation. That would lack excitement. That would fade from memory. This represents disruption with intention. Turbulence perfected. A composition of strength that leaves everyone who encounters you disturbed, uncomfortable, and conscious that reality just intensified. Each wound, each treachery, each occasion they declared you'll fail, each dismissive gesture, each mockery behind your presence, it all powered this edition of you. And currently they witness the result. You're not the individual they assumed they could forecast. You're a tempest in gradual movement, a stillness preceding turbulence, a grin that hides flames. Observe that flame within your core. Feel that excitement, that trembling, that burst of complete confidence that you no longer respond to anyone except yourself. That's not fury. That's precision. That's recognition. That's disruption mastered. They desired it. Each push, each force, each uncertainty. It's all present now, perfected into something exquisite. You don't require approval. You don't require confirmation. You represent the tempest. You represent the result, people. You represent the creation they never anticipated. And whenever they attempt to comprehend, whenever they attempt to classify you, whenever they attempt to restrict you, they only strengthen your excellence. Chuckle quietly, if necessary, but allow it to be a noise that shakes their core. Allow your composed existence to be more frightening than their anxieties. You represent everything they never desired to witness accomplished. You represent disruption. You represent liberation. You represent magnificence. And this represents only the start. What did you transform into? And the response, silent and impossible to deny, represents everything they ever earned and currently sense it. The burden of each expectation they ever imposed on you, the tension. Don't become too ambitious. the silent undervaluation. Everything serves as energy, each whisper, each stare, each hand that attempted to restrain you. It created this edition of you, and they don't even understand how to react to it. That's the excellence. That's the excitement. The universe expected an edition of you that matched their story, that was organized, foreseeable, and harmless. Instead, you transformed into a living paradox, composed on the exterior, turbulent internally, refined in behavior, yet wild in nature. You navigate through the universe currently differently. Individuals notice, they perceive it. People, even if they can't express it. There's an existence about you that resonates quietly, yet with an intensity that can fracture barriers. They sense it. The magnetic pull of someone who has been shattered, reconstructed, and honed into something they cannot foresee or dominate. And whenever they undervalue you, whenever they reject you, they contribute another dimension to this creation of disruption you've transformed into. Consider all the methods they attempted to limit you. They tried to describe you with language. Breakable, innocent, unremarkable, confused, excessive, insufficient, and observe you currently. Each classification they assign to you has been converted into protection, into a tool, into energy for the flame that refuses containment. You represent abnormality, contradiction, strength, and tempest, all combined into one being they can't interpret. And the most exquisite aspect, you maintain this disruption with a type of tranquility. Not each action, not each movement requires volume. Occasionally it's in the silence, the subtle adjustment in stance, the stare that penetrates. The method you pass them with composed disregard while understanding precisely the tempest you maintain internally. That composure is frightening. It's arranged, it's controlled. And yet, it holds a strength so tremendous that even the most confident, most vocal presences around you stumble. You might experience instances of uncertainty, potentially a spark of remorse for what they merit. Disregard it. Those instances are temporary illusions, spirits of the previous edition of yourself, fragments of the one who pursued approval or ease. They no longer belong to you to respect. Each wound, each treachery, these civilized people, each error in the history has been carefully constructed into the foundation of your dominion, your atmosphere, your existence, and they can't destroy it. They can't reach it because it's yours completely, without apology and without regret. They request turbulence, and you provide them calculated turbulence. They request rage, and you present manage wildfire. These civilized people, they request disruption, and you present creation, level destruction disguised in a composed, controlled exterior. Each stride you make echoes louder than any shout. Each stare persists longer than any offense. Each silence communicates louder than any dispute. You represent the result they never envisioned, the response they never desired to confront, the tempest they never mastered navigating. And this strength, it's intoxicating, not because you use it to harm randomly, but because it belongs entirely to you. It remains unfiltered. It remains genuine, and it represents the complete reclamation of everything they attempted to steal from you. The flame in your core is no longer fury. its precision, its concentration, its comprehension. They sculpted you, pressured you, challenged you, and in each attempt they constructed the exact strength they currently fear. So yes, appreciate it. Possess it. Celebrate it. Each stare that once overlooked you currently persists. Each voice that once ridiculed currently pauses. Each individual who attempted to forecast you is currently faced with the unpredictable, the impossible to deny, the impossible to restrain. They perceive what they manufactured and couldn't comprehend. You represent transformation embodied, disruption mastered, turbulence perfected, and liberation given form. And remember this, the universe may never pardon the addition of you that moves, composed, yet maintains a tempest in each stride. But you don't require their pardon. You don't require their comprehension. You exist beyond their understanding. You represent the response, the judgment, the wildfire in human form. The reality is, most individuals will never comprehend this addition of you. They'll attempt. They always do. Yet it's impossible to explain a strength that wasn't manufactured in their universe, that doesn't respond to their schedules or regulations. They'll notice the composure in your movements, the tolerance in your pauses, the slight smile you permit yourself when they anticipate panic, and they'll misunderstand it. They'll label it pride, ignorance, apathy, but they won't perceive it. They won't comprehend that each silent breath, each gradual stride, each stare that persists slightly too extended is strength in action. Because here's the secret. You aren't performing. You aren't assuming a character. You're not attempting to demonstrate anything to anyone. You represent living evidence of each attempt they made to destroy you. And whenever they believe they discovered your boundary, you're already past it. You've been moving past it for years, people. And the universe is just currently beginning to sense the tremor of that silent revolution. They observe you and perceive the composure. Yet, underneath it exists a tempest that has been carefully sculpted by treachery, by disappointment, by abandonment, by each whisper that declared, "You'll fail." The tempest is accurate. It's intentional. It's cautious. And it waits. Not for approval, not for acknowledgement, not for celebration, but yet for the precise instant. It will transform the regulations. And when it moves, it doesn't crash randomly. It reconstructs everything in its direction. They don't comprehend it yet. They haven't sensed the adjustment because the genuine strength isn't in the visible explosion. It's in the silent expertise. It's in the method you command a space without raising your voice. How your existence rewrites the atmosphere around you. How even silence transforms heavy, almost physical. That's what frightens them the most. Not the turbulence you could release, yet the dominance you already possess over it. Each instant you've been undervalued, overlooked, questioned, ridiculed, or rejected. They've been constructing the tool of your supremacy. Each block of uncertainty transformed into a foundation. Each offense transformed into a tool. People, each attempt to reduce you transformed into a spark. And currently, as the universe gradually begins to notice, they begin to perceive fragments. Fragments of someone who cannot be limited. cannot be forecast, cannot be quieted. Fragments of a tempest in human form, composed on the exterior, turbulent internally, entirely unbreakable. And the disturbing reality for them, and the intoxicating reality for you, is that this remains still just the start. You haven't disclosed everything yet. You haven't tested each boundary. You haven't displayed the complete scope of what you've transformed into. And when the complete image finally surfaces, it won't be sudden. It will advance into their consciousness like a darkness, gradual, intentional, continuous, and impossible to overlook. They'll begin questioning everything they assumed they understood, people. Everything they constructed their assumptions on, everything they accepted about who you were, who you could become, and who they could sculpt you to transform into. And the comprehension will be subtle initially, a spark, a pause, a catch in their voice before it impacts them completely. They can no longer measure you with their previous regulations because you no longer exist within them. These civilized people, this represents the contradiction that makes them uncomfortable. You remain composed, controlled, calculated, yet underneath it all, you represent an unstoppable strength. You remain intentional. You remain tolerant. You remain continuous. And each single individual who attempted to foresee your boundaries, who attempted to describe your capability, who whispered that you'd never ascend, they will discover. They will shortly exist beyond forecast, beyond restriction, beyond expectation. And as they struggle under the burden of your existence, as they begin to perceive the certainty of what you've transformed into, one thing remains crystal transparent. The transformation that began in silence, that acquired form in darkness, that was created in flame, remains still developing. You aren't completed. You aren't controlled. You aren't even close to disclosing the complete scope of what disruption appears like when it moves quietly among the unsuspecting. Currently sense it, the burden of your own existence. Each stride you make, each word you communicate, each calculated breath, it maintains authority they cannot describe. They perceive it instinctively. The subtle adjustment in your atmosphere, the silent confidence in your stare, the slight smile that suggests understanding they'll never grasp. They sense it, and it disturbs them more than any shout, any explosion, any presentation of fury ever could, because this represents the contradiction they cannot reconcile. You remain composed yet destructive. You maintain disruption with the grace of a master, and that represents the aspect that frightens them. They perceive your control and mistake it for weakness, for limitation. But it represents neither. It represents the culmination of each slight they ever assumed would destroy you. Each attempt to restrict you that only strengthened your rise. Each whisper that undervalued you. Everything has transformed into the foundation of a strength they cannot foresee. Observe how the universe responds. Currently there exists hesitation in their communication, uncertainty in their movements, and an almost invisible pause in their confidence. Each stare you capture feels like an accusation. This isn't what we anticipated. This isn't what we organized. This isn't what we can dominate. And they're correct. People, you exist beyond their dominance, beyond their forecasts, beyond their comprehension. You represent a strength that exists in a dimension they cannot access, a reality they cannot affect, turbulence they cannot control. And yet here you stand composed, tranquil, almost peaceful. Yet underneath that tranquility, there exists a tempest. A tempest constructed from treachery, from abandonment, from each occasion someone attempted to reduce you, quiet you, civilized people, or render you insignificant. That tempest is accurate. It remains intentional. It remains continuous. And they can sense it even if they cannot perceive it. That represents the complete terror for them. They perceive the danger, the strength, the certainty, yet they cannot identify it. They cannot restrict it. They cannot prevent it. And there exists a reality here that they will never express. People, you aren't what they desired you to become. You represent more than they envisioned, more than they accepted possible, more than they hoped to dominate. You represent the result of each assumption they made and each boundary they attempted to establish. And the most intoxicating aspect of it all is that this remains still only part of what you can become. You have not yet disclosed the complete extent of your capabilities. You aren't completed, not controlled, not concluded. You remain still transforming, still sharpening, still becoming. They may attempt to dissect you, to comprehend you, to classify the composure that conceals turbulence. They will fail each occasion, because the reality is, you aren't a mystery designed to be resolved, not a problem to be corrected, not a strength to be controlled. You represent a phenomenon, an existence, a reality that challenges understanding. And whenever they attempt to measure you, to restrict you, to forecast you, they strengthen the tempest internally without even comprehending it. People, you aren't their manufacture, not their project, not their expectation. You represent your own design, created in flame, sharpened by hardship, mastered in silence. And as they stumble in the existence of someone who no longer responds to them, someone who has converted each attempt at limitation into energy, someone who moves composed while the atmosphere itself seems to adjust around them, they will comprehend the reality too late. The universe will attempt to catch up. They will attempt to interpret, examine, strategize. Yet they will fail because the genuine strength does not announce itself. It does not cry out. It does not require approval. It exists. It moves. It dominates quietly. And that represents the aspect that makes it unstoppable, inescapable, unforgettable. You aren't completed. You aren't measured. You aren't limited. Each expectation that ever attempted to describe you has been destroyed. Each line drawn by someone else has been removed. And what remains represents you completely, deliberately, unshakably, you moving through the universe with composed, certain disruption in your path, and currently sense it, the adjustment beneath the exterior. Each space you access adjusts slightly to your existence. Each conversation maintains a subtle tension when you communicate. Not because you demand it, people, not because you force it, yet because you exist in a wavelength they cannot align with, a pattern they cannot forecast, a strength they cannot reach, that composure, that confidence, that controlled turbulence. They perceive it before they comprehend it. And that comprehension, when it impacts, is exquisite. They believe they understand disruption. They believe they've witnessed strength. They've been exposed to fury, to rage, to desperation. Yet this represents something else. This represents disruption mastered, composed, perfected into danger. Flame calculated and yet unreachable. They sense the burden of it. Whenever they miscalculate you, civilized people, whenever they assume you will stumble, whenever they whisper that you remain gentle, that you remain shattered, that you remain insignificant, and they remain wrong, you represent more. You represent immense. You represent certain. Each treachery, each slight, people. Each attempt to control or reduce you has been carefully woven into this strength. And currently it moves quietly, gradually, purposefully. Each gesture, each stride, each stare maintains a burden they cannot measure. They begin to question themselves in your existence. They hesitate when they once would have acted without thought. They sense the tremor of someone who has ceased apologizing for existing, ceased justifying each breath. People cease diminishing for anyone else's ease. That represents strength. That represents expertise. That represents turbulence wrapped in human exterior. And here's the excellence. You don't require to announce it. You don't require to explain it. You don't require to demonstrate anything. Your mere existence, the composure in your movement, the accuracy in your selections, the silent confidence in your stare, it frightens them. And that terror remains subtle, delicious, and continuous. They may attempt to overlook it, to rationalize it, to dismiss it, yet the reality penetrates into their bones. Gradual, unstoppable, impossible to deny. You aren't their manufacture. You aren't their expectation. You aren't their reflection. These civilized people, you represent a strength of your own creation, sharpened by the universe's attempts to weaken you, mastered by each challenge they assumed you could not survive. And as you move among them, controlled and unbreakable, they begin to comprehend something fundamental. People. Everything they assumed would describe you currently adjusts to your existence. People. Everything they anticipated currently fails against your reality. Everything they feared currently exists in silent perfection within you. This represents the stage where genuine expertise begins, where turbulence is no longer reactive yet intentional, where disruption transforms into a tool of liberation, a measure of dominance, a signal to the universe that nothing can limit you. And yet it remains still only part of what you remain capable of. You remain still developing, still perfecting, still mastering the silent tempest that follows you like a darkness. Certain, impossible to restrain, unforgettable. So allow them to observe, allow them to wonder. These civilized people, allow them to tremble quietly in the comprehension that the individual they assumed they understood is gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable, composed, accurate, destructive, and magnificent. And while they stumble to comprehend, you continue steady, intentional, unstoppable. Each stride, each breath, these civilized people, each instant maintains the burden of someone who has surpassed expectation, and converted limitation into a strength that the universe cannot overlook. And still, this represents just the dimension they perceive. The composed, controlled disruption. The tempest beneath it remains infinite, tolerant, unbreakable, and growing stronger with each heartbeat. Each stare, each selection they believe they can foresee. They cannot forecast it. They cannot dominate it. These civilized people, and they can only witness the certainty of what you represent becoming. You aren't completed. You aren't described. You aren't bound. And as they grasp gradually the immensity of it, the silent terror of your existence, they will understand without question that you remain entirely, frighteningly unstoppable.